program, and it's excited a lot of interest across the continent. So how do you see now you're, was it 2 years, I think, into the presidency? How do you see what's working and what's your biggest constraint and challenge?
Prime Minister, thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, I have to thank President Kagame for the excellent hospitality. I have to agree with Strive. Coming to Kigali is always a lot of fun. Yeah. We're grateful for the hospitality. And also, coming here is always for serious matters. The last time I was here, we came to sign the agreement for the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area. And then this time it is for a subject as important as agriculture. So Kigali occupies a very important place in my mind and consciousness. I have also perforce to add a few words to what Strive said about our iconic compatriot who was gone. Kofi Annan, as you know, was a Ghanaian, and I think it would be remiss of a Ghanaian leader not to say something in his memory, especially since he had so much to do with the establishment of this whole institution now. The uniquely African Green Revolution was his idea. So next week, we're expecting his remains on Monday in Accra, and then on Thursday, the 13th, we're going to give him full honors and to send him off. So it's a pity that the occasion when I'm here, he's not here to support me, but there it is. I think the question that you've asked, what has been success? What are the challenges? For me, the success has been essentially about policy. Because when you look at where we were before we came into office, and then what has happened since, it is largely because the policy has been properly aligned, in my view. The 3 years before we took office, Ghanaian agriculture grew at something around 2.5% per annum. You're talking about a country whose agricultural profile is that it is essentially smallholder farmers. 95% of those involved in Ghanaian agriculture are smallholder farmers. And we're talking about smallholder farmers who are dealing in 2 or 3 hectares of land, essentially family owners. 2 or 3% of growth. In the country where population growth is at 3% per annum, then you know what is happening. You're talking about deepening rural poverty, which has helped in the acceleration of the migration of our youth from the villages to the towns, with all its social and other pressures that implies. And largely because there was a failure of policy. Some easy indices of that. The value of food imports in Ghana between 2007 and 2016. In 2007, it was $350 million value of imports of foods that we grow in Ghana. 10 years later, the figure had gone to 2.2 billion. An explosion in food imports. 2.2 billion is the amount of money we earn from our principal foreign exchange earner, cocoa. Right. So the amount of money we earn from cocoa goes to paying for our food imports. And if you have that kind of situation, you know there's a serious problem. And it is a problem of a failure of policy. So what we decided to do to revive Ghanaian is to devise a program which we call Planting for Food and Jobs. This is a program that is anchored on 5 main pillars. 1, essentially supporting agricultural production. 1, supplying improved inputs, seedlings to our farmers, subsidizing fertilizer. Fertilizer is being supplied to farmers under the program at 50% of of the market. For the poorest farmers, they have the opportunity to pay 25% upfront and the 25% after harvest to give them that space. We have a marketing strategy in place which is based on the buffer stock idea, with warehouses that have been strategically located around the country. We then also have got an e-platform program which allows us to monitor both the delivery as well as the performance of those in it. And these will be the essential pillars. We're devising also financial instruments that would enable farmers to have access to credit. The most important of which is the one that is being done with the collaboration of the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana is establishing a fund, some 500 odd million cedis, which is roughly over $100 million, which is going to act as a sort of insurance for the commercial farmers, to banks, to be able to give out loans at reasonable rates to the farmers. So this is the package of measures that have been put in place. And they've had a dramatic impact already on yields. Maize, which was yielding, 2 metric tons per hectare, is now gone over 3. Cocoa, that was Ghanaian cocoa, when you compared it to Ivorian cocoa, 450 kilograms per hectare. In Ghana, 1,000 kilograms per hectare in Cote d'Ivoire. We're bridging that gap. We're now also focusing very seriously on establishing a really secure and reliable supply of fertilizer. So far in Ghana, we're employing something like 12 kilos of fertilizer per hectare. That's low, way below the average of, even within the ECOWAS region, of 20, global average of 150. They say in China, they 250 kilograms per hectare of fertilizer goes in there. So that is also part of the policy framework that is being designed. And the end result of it has been a significant increase in agricultural output and productivity. This last year, was our first year in office, 8.3% was the growth of Ghanaian agriculture.
So that'll impact your import substitution.
Absolutely. So this is why I'm saying that for me, the most obvious area of success has been the policy making and implementation. Major constraints. The obvious one, of course, is budgetary. To support this program of planting for food and jobs, we were able to squeeze out some 450 odd million cedis, which is just over $100 million. Woefully inadequate. We still have to pay the suppliers, etc. Yeah. And this year, when we're transitioning from 200,000 farmers in the program to 500,000, the budgetary impact on the central government is even greater. So that's a major challenge that we're facing. How to find the funds to support the program. As I say, the Bank of Ghana is coming out with assistance, which we believe will ease the situation for us. But it doesn't mean. And you asked us for one, but you excuse me if I add a second, in terms of challenges. And that is what the Rwandan president referred to, attitudes. I think that is a major challenge, whereby people still continue to look upon agriculture as something that people who don't have anything else to do.
Right, something to escape from.
Something to escape from, and not something which will provide a good life, which will make an important contribution to the development of the society. And I think that attitudinal change is something that we need to work on systematically so that we can have that performing agriculture that we need. It cannot be right that a continent that has something like 25% of the world's agricultural land produces 10% of the world's output of food. These are the disconnects within the African reality, which should give all of us very serious cause for concern. 60% of the jobs on this continent, they're the same in Ghana. Those statistics mirror the Ghanaian reality, are produced by agriculture. At the same time, agriculture's contribution to GDP is somewhere in the region of 32%, continental-wise. Those statistics are the Ghanaian statistics as well. These facts tell us that there has been systematically a failure of policy of being able to look at what we need to do to get out of our situation. My belief continues to be that until we sit down and work out what we need to do, we should stop blaming other people for our problems. Yes, we can't continue. Yeah, we should stop blaming other people for our problems. Accept our reality. Yes, colonialism, imperialism were very distorting, very destabilizing phenomena, but they're past, they've gone. We have to deal with the reality that we find. It's like saying you'd have liked to have been born in the 19th century. You can't. You're born in the 21st century. That's the reality you have to deal with. Sure. We have to deal with the reality of the post-colonial world and find solutions for our situation. And I think that is what we, the leaders, above all, this has to be our responsibility, finding the solutions that allow our people to get a better life. So this is...
Maybe one interesting thing is, because this is obviously something that is a collective ambition, but we know there's some tough practical challenges in meeting it. What's the role of education in this as well?
Well, I think critical. Yeah. I don't think that...
Because you need the human capital as well, don't you?
Yeah. It's critical. I think that we have to focus on it, and focus on it in a very determined and systematic manner. Now, just a few examples from my own country. For the last 10 years, until last year, every year an average of some 100,000 Ghanaians, young boys and girls, dropped out of the educational system at the level of junior high school. They have the qualification, but they wouldn't necessarily have the money to be able to pursue education to senior high school, which would mean that in the course of a decade, 1 million young Ghanaians will be thrown into the society, into the labor market, with the educational foundation of junior high school level. You know that for this century, that is totally inadequate. You're not competing just with yourself, you're competing with laborers across the world.
And that impacts on your ability then to deliver the supply chain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have done, we came to the conclusion that we needed to open up the avenue access to senior high school education. So we've made senior high school education in the public sector in Ghana now free. Last, in September last year, when the policy kicked into effect, 90,000 more Ghanaian students were absorbed into the educational system than the year before. That 100,000 that was dropping out was now going to school. This year, it's 180,000 that are now going to find their way into secondary education. So that is clearly a very important matter that we need to do. But I'd also like to just take on a little bit what President Kagame was saying and Deputy President Ruto, is the practical steps of things that we need to do. The Continental Free Trade Area has been signed by nearly 50 of the 54 African countries. You require 22 of us to ratify it for the agreement to come into effect. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge. Right. So those of us, everybody's talking about inter-regional trade. Kenya has deposited its instrument of ratification. They did it at the same time as Ghana. A few others have done it. The 22, where are they forthcoming? We ought to interrogate ourselves about where the 22 are, because that is how, very simple, practical step, we can bring it into being. And I think that, I don't think that there's a need for me to elaborate too much more all that has been said. But this way of looking at our problems, also in terms of collaboration. For instance, We are now in very active discussions with Morocco. I see the president, the PDG of their phosphate and the fertilizer company is sitting right in front of him. We're talking to him very seriously about collaborating about how now to supply fertilizer at acceptable prices for the Ghanaian market. We don't have to go all kinds of different places in the world. Morocco is just a few hundred kilometers north of us, out there in North Africa. These are the things. Cote d'Ivoire, we've decided that after all these years, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana produce 65% of the world's output of cocoa. In 2016, the value of the chocolate-related, cocoa-related industry worldwide was over 100 billion United States dollars. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, 65% responsible for the output. Right. We realize 5.7 billion between us, 5% of the value chain. So, President Ouattara, that's a challenge. Yeah. President Ouattara and I have now come to a formal agreement on paper that we're going to now collaborate and work together to transform the circumstances of our cooking. But these are, I think, the practical things